Let's bring in our regular panel, the former Victorian Liberal Party President Michael Kroger, former Labor Minister Stephen Conroy. Gentlemen, great to see you for the first time of 2024 and lots to get our teeth into. Stephen, first to you. I can't imagine the Prime Minister breaking in such an egregious way a promise on tax cuts. What are you expecting? Do you think this might be a more generous package? They're letting the speculation run only to say, no, don't worry, we're actually going further with more generosity at the lower and middle end.
Well, I think these were tax cuts that were legislated, 2 elections ago, pre-COVID. But these were tax cuts that didn't forecast the impact of COVID. They didn't forecast the inflationary burst that we've had over the last 18 months. So I think the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting something to be different. So I think if the government have listened to the electorate, the government have said we need broader, relief from the cost of living pressures, then I'm sure there'll be some tweaks and that they'll want to expand the beneficiaries of the proposed tax cuts at the moment. So I think ultimately, yes, Peter Dutton will be trying to pretend that 4 years of Australian economic activity, COVID didn't exist, and that this is just as simple as, well, you just got to do it because it was a good idea 4 years ago. I'm sure that'll be his mantra, but I'm not sure that the broad Australian public are going to agree with him. They want cost of living relief, and they want it now.
Michael, what's your assessment? More people get more cash, more people get more tax returned to them. Is that a political winner?
Well, if they're increasing the amount going back to taxpayers, yeah, it's a political winner. I mean, Kieran, what he can't do is break the promise, whether it's the top end, low end, middle end. He can't break the promise that he, you'll be the star of the next election, mate, because every one of those interviews you did with him where he promised, oh, we're committed. He can't walk away from that. He's already in trouble on the $275, which he promised for the power price reduction, which hasn't happened. That'll be running at the next election. Goodness knows where the voice, his commitment to the Uluru Statement from the heart in full will be in a year or so's time. What he can't do is break this promise and leave anyone worse off that thinks that they're getting the tax cut as promised during the election. So that's what he can't do. Otherwise, he'll run into a Gillard, carbon tax writ large. So let's wait and see what happens. Yeah. He's been in a hole and he needs to dig himself out of it rather than dig deeper.
And there are a number of cabinet ministers who would share that view. I can say that, Michael, that share Michael Kroger's view. So let's see where they land. They're meeting today, the cabinet. Let's talk about Australia Day. I'm interested, Stephen Conroy, your thoughts on this. Pat Cummins, a great cricketer, one of the best, a generational talent. And today he says, at a personal level, he thinks the date of Australia Day should change. What's the situation with the Australian cricket captains injecting themselves into debates like this? Is that fair enough?
Look. Firstly, everyone's entitled to their opinion on this issue. I've repeatedly said over years that the picking of the 26th was to some degree an artificial construct. I remember that the Australia Day long weekend in January used to be the weekend that the volleyball community, which I was part of when I was much younger, used to have a tournament that was played every Australia Day long weekend. The date did not matter. It was called the Australia Day long weekend. So I haven't grown up with, this day is like it's Independence Day in the US. This is a construct. I think there are different ways to address this. I think you've got to be careful not to disrespect those that believe that the 26th is, some foundational day for Australia, but also accepting that there are criticism. I think the voice debate and the voice referendum has focused in on these issues, and you can see overwhelming majority of Australians rejected the voice, which you would probably say on balance that the majority of Australians support the 26th, but I'm sure there'll be rallies against it. There have been increasingly large rallies over the last few years. People need to just calm down and have a mutual, respectful debate about what day is. I mean, if you suddenly say, let's make it March the 30th instead, and all of the anti-Australia Day people suddenly said, well, we hate that day too. So we've got to find a way to be inclusive to everybody. that is a day that everybody is comfortable with.
Michael, Pat Cummins says in that news conference, this country is the greatest country on earth. He loves representing Australia. He is of the view, a personal view, that he thinks that we could find a better date. What's your response to his contribution to the discussion?
Well, perhaps Pat can tell us why it's such a great country. You know, we seem to have a lot of critics in this country, and from people that sort of don't seem to like anything about our education system, our origins, our response in the Middle East, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We are a country that is facing campaigns by the left and the elites. There's 1,000 of them running across every part of the Australian landscape, and demonstrations are designed to intimidate, and they are intimidating, and they're successful. And they've intimidated a lot of corporates over the years. They've been successful, these Australia Day rallies, so that the Australian cricket captain is part of an elite group of people. He's earning millions of dollars a year. He needs to read the room, Pat Cummins. He needs to see the result of the voice. No, people are happy with Australia Day. They want to celebrate the great things about this country, and he should stop listening to the minority of eternal critics. As cricket captain, of course, he's cocooned up there. He'll have people like Cricket Australia board. You know, you'll have a small group of people around you saying, "Don't upset people." Well, occasionally, Pat, you have to stand for something in public life, and standing for a day which acknowledges, you know, an Aboriginal heritage and a British foundation is how Australia should be treating Australia Day. This is one of the greatest countries in the world. I've just been in Europe, and I can tell you it was very good to get back to this country. So no, I don't agree with Pat Cummins, and I think he should proudly come out. If he thinks this is the greatest country in the world, Pat, perhaps you can explain to us why.